Okay, hooray. We'll just hit reload and see whether or not we're streaming properly. We are live. Oh, right, I can't copy-paste anything anymore. What a pain. What happens if I just go here? Is that going to work? No, they've actually disabled it instead of redirecting it. Wow, Twitch's upgrades in quotes, are really awful. Well, whatever. That's not what I wanted. That's new tab. Here we are. I am going to model a backpack with legs. Indie dev. Paste. Nope, can't paste that. Doesn't work anymore. Try that. Maybe that'll work. All right, seems to work. Just go on and say the same thing in the other window. To paste. Sorry, I'm on the edge of burping. I'm not sure why. I guess it's pretty common. I've heard a lot of streamers who immediately burp for like 5 minutes after they start streaming, and I can only assume that I have the same annoying condition, but I'll try not to. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do this backpack some better stuff. I modeled this backpack just to block it out, just to see what's up, and I came up with some ideas. We're going to do some sketching, and then we're going to do some modeling. Hopefully that'll be fun. So the idea here is that this is like a future backpack. It has everything the diver needs, like air tanks and whatever, but it's also something that has robotic legs. So when you're swimming underwater, it looks really awkward. You do this really dumb-looking frog kick, and that's not something that people generally put in games. Instead, they usually only put in the like graceful Olympic kick, which is fine because you're actually traveling very fast in games. But I wanted to have two distinct kicks, one for slow and one for fast. And I figured if we got these kind of robot legs, then what we can do is we can have these robot legs do the slow. And then when you switch to fast, you can just do a mermaid kick with the robot legs doing the upper half. So you have like vertical scissors. And that should work pretty well. And then we're also going to have some straps here with more dangly bits. But we have to actually see how we want it to look. So let's pull out the old half glove and doodle. All right, so we got some person. Now that's not a very good pencil, is it? I must have edited it at some point and made it suck. That one should be okay. Let's try this one. It's kind of thick, but it'll do. All right, so we got this person, right? And basically, we're going to have a diver gear on them. So what we're going to want is to have a dive pack that has two diver tubes in it for breathing. But we're going to want to nestle them in because what we're kind of doing is kind of hot slotted diver tubes instead of what you might be expecting for, the standard setup, which is not like that. But that's fine. We're not doing the standard setup. We're doing the future setup. So what we're going to want is to have some kind of setup where we have this kind of slot in sort of feature. I'm not sure what we're going to put on the top. And I'm thinking that either we want to have cut-ins on the inside or on the outside. And I'm not really sure which way I prefer it. Oh, there comes the burp. Sorry. I think if it's on the outside, it looks kind of strange. I think if we were going to do that, we would want to have them all on the outside rather than half and half. If we put it on the inside, we can do something like this, right? Have kind of a heart shape. And then here we might have a dial or an indicator, but it looks a little bit strange, so maybe it would go somewhere else, like on the tank itself or something. I'm not sure. But if we then bring it in like this, what we can do is we can create this kind of spiral effect. And then this part here can be a strap sort of thing, so that basically the idea is that you you still physically take the tubes out by unstrapping something. And then we'll have like little strappy bits coming off, right? And then we're going to want to be able to use this edge here as a mount for the long tendril legs, something like this, right? So just kind of sketch those legs in. But the question is how we want the rest of the box to look, because this is got some details to it that I'm not sure about. I think that if we bring in like a nub here, we can have a fun little reflected nub situation. I think that would look good. And then with that, we can bring this up kind of backpack style. I didn't really draw it with any particular angle, so it's all wonky, but whatever. We're just concept sketching here. We're not trying to get it right. But what do we want for here? I think that I think that I want this strap to be the primary thing. I think I want a gap so it stops here. And then there is like a floating strap, and then that floating strap will kind of mark the end of this set of tubes. And then this kind of cup goes underneath, not completely sealing it in. It's not completely covering the bottom, just enough to anchor it there. And so we got something like this for the bottom. And then for the top, I don't want something that's too backpacky. Let's do a quick little search. Diver back. I've actually gone diving, but all I remember about the backpack is that it's actually just tubes. It's like 2 straps and then a crap ton of tubes. And that's pretty much what it is. You see, even though you're underwater, at diving speeds, your aerodynamics are not important. You're not really diving along terribly fast. So really all that the diver packs are tubes and then a strap for the diver tanks. So there's really no sort of expected visual for this. If we were going to go with something that is the expected visual, the only thing that really fits is that there is like something here with tubes coming out of it, right? And that's not a bad visual. I kind of like that visual because it goes along well with the tendrils and legs that we've got coming down here, right? And then the question is, what do I want to do to brace it in? We've got this kind of spiral appearance here, and I think that it might be good to continue that, so maybe we'll bring it in with a mount. Now that I'm not sure. That feels a little bit strange. We could also bring it in here, like this, because that's more tendrils. And if we did that, then I'm not sure what we would want to do here. Maybe we should put like I'm trying to think, like, do we want a storage pouch or something? That might be a good idea. Like if we put in just... Oh, no, wait, we've got the visual we need, right? We've got that glow that we want to use as an indicator. So if we use that glow right here, then we can use the glow to unify the floaty bit, the valve bit, with the rest of the tank. And that means that we've got to have a stripe of solid running here. We don't want that stripe to feel over silly, or we don't want it to feel like a bulge. I'm trying to figure out, what, let's model the rest, and when we get there we'll figure out what to do. So I just put the tablet away. I keep forgetting you guys can't see the other screen. Super Donut says that I'm very good at talking to myself. It keeps me focused. I only talk to myself on streams, and that means that when I'm streaming, I do a very different kind of work. My brain works in a completely different way when I'm streaming, which means that I can do, some streaming and some offline work, and everything will work out because I'll have both methods of working. Pardon me while I sip. What a beautiful visual you've defaulted to. There we are. So this is the diver. Although they look naked, they're not. They're just not textured. And this is the primitive tank I made before, just to get a test tank out there. We're going to put it away and create a new tank. So we're going to just, first we're going to center, and then we're going to add cylinders. So when we go into this, we're going to need to have a mirror, like so. And then we'll just begin to edit. And as always, I'm not a pro, so if you think that I'm doing something either good or bad here, don't take it as some kind of official best practice, because I don't have any official best practices. I barely have any practices at all. But basically I want to make sure that these tanks are the right size, and they're going to be smaller than modern tanks for a couple of reasons. One reason is because they're high-tech tanks, so they can take more pressure. Another reason is that you're not a human, so you don't need the same category of air, or at least you don't need as much. So we're going to have something like this for the tanks. The top of the tank isn't going to be visible, so we're not going to model it. The bottom of the tank just needs to be rounded like this, and then we'll just smooth it. Up here, we can turn on auto smoothing, and you can see that that gives us these creases. We don't really want those creases. I could work to try and make them go away some other way, but the easiest way to make them go away is just to bevel. There we go. So Super Donut says, I've watched almost all your YouTube videos on Unity and would like to thank you for putting them out there. I feel like I have an advantage in game dev just having stumbled across your YouTube. I've been meaning to catch one of your streams, but I keep missing them. Well, thanks. I do it as a hobby, so don't take anything I do too seriously, but I am old, so I do know quite a bit. How much of it is still useful is up to question. Game dev is hard, and anything you can find that gives you a heads up or a lead is worth following up on, whether it's a video or advice or whatever else you can get. So if I was helpful, that's great. Don't stick too close to just one person, though. I wouldn't want to claim to be the only person on the internet that has something to say. 6 of 10 says, nudity. Nope. No, I just explained before you got here that it's just untextured. I should probably just bring in the suit texture so you can tell, but I mean, you can see there's no nudity here. It's just a wetsuit. I don't actually know. I guess I could probably bring in the texture. The problem is there are actually two textures. I'm not going to bother. We'll just leave it pink. If people want to think that that's a naked person, that's how a naked person looks, then they are welcome to, although they are in for a rude surprise when they actually meet one. All right, so what we're doing is we're modeling this thing here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm setting up this curve. And the way we're going to do that is by chopping out the parts of the tank that don't fit into that particular curve. And the easiest way to do that is probably to start with a nice slice like this. And what we'll do is we'll turn on clipping, and then we'll just grab all of these inside faces. Boom, 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 boom. And we'll just extrude them straight out and then delete the faces. Kabloom. The curve is not quite right, but we can edit it. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over into this mode, and we'll just turn on connected only. And then when we move this around, you can see that we can change the shape. So we can try and create a shape that suits our needs a little bit better. We're probably going to have to do this more than once. This gives me, this shape feels a little bit strange, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. And here what I'm doing is I'm pulling it towards the camera just so that it doesn't overlap. And then what we need to do is the exact same thing. So duplicate, and then 6 of 10 says seafloor, new game. Oh yeah, we're working on a new game. It's not I don't know how new it is. I've been working on it for almost a year now. Super Donut says that they like my video on pixel tile sets, which I actually really like that video too. I'll be honest. I was really chuffed when I made that video because I was like, this pixel, this is something that most people don't seem to talk about very much. I won't claim that it is the best thing out there because I'm not a dedicated pixel artist, but I liked it. And I'm glad that it worked, that someone liked it. So now what we're doing is we're just creating another layer, and we're going to just do the opposite way of moving these elements around, but pulling it down rather than up. But I don't like this one anymore. Deleted. Oh, the Galactic Line, that was three years ago. I've made an entire game and part of 2 more games between the last time you visited and now. Super Donut says, do I have a Discord? I don't. I'm just a hobbyist. I don't have enough time to do everything, full time. If you want to contact me, for specific questions, I would recommend Twitter, which should be available. You should be able to see it on I should have a link on the Twitch channel, because I check that pretty frequently. Did I ever finish Galactic Line? No. So the problem with Galactic Line is that it required roughly a decade of assets, and I couldn't guarantee the game was going to be worthwhile. So what I did is I made a game that was specifically about some of the assets. I made a game that was about the spaceship assets, and that was fun. And once that was done, I made a game that was about the human assets, and that's what we're kind of working on now, because I actually made 2 games that were about the human assets. Oh, Super Donut wants to show me the tile sets. I think you can post images or links to images in Twitch chat too, if you wanted to post that now. As long as there's no Twitch rule-breaking things like naked people in them, feel free. Six of 10 says it might eventually come together to make one big project, right? Well, that's the idea, but I'm not actually sure how feasible that actually is. The Galactic Line was a huge project, and it didn't feel like a huge project when I started it. But the more I worked on it, the larger it obviously became, just due to the realization of the assets I'd need. I'd need spaceship exteriors and spaceship interiors and planetary meshes, and we'd need people and aliens and clothes and hair, and it was just a lot. It'll be a while before I have a library of that category of that size just available for use. But what I have done is I've gotten really quite a bit faster at putting assets together. So I think that in the long run I'll be able to make larger projects, and people in spaceships is kind of my thing. So you can guarantee that I will be back to that particular sort of thing pretty quick. But for right now, we're just doing a diving game, and we're now modeling a futuristic diving pack. If I can make it work, I'm having a really tough time with this particular part, to the point where this is why I gave up on it last time I tried to model it. And I don't know if I just have the wrong approach or if I'm thinking about it wrong or what, but I cannot get this join to look right. So I'm just going to ignore it. And we're going to do the rest, and then we'll come back to it. So what I'm doing now is I'm doing the outside bit of the curve. We'll have to adjust the exact curves here. I'm just kind of putting them together to make sure they exist. But while the inside of the curve did not need the entire tank, the outside of the curve does, because it kind of cups the bottom of the tank. So we'll just grab this bit of tank at the top here, slide it on down, and then we will cut it into a curve. There we are. Now we're not going to have the full extent of this curve, so we're going to just delete a good chunk of it. But first we got to delete this base, and the reason for that is because otherwise it will be impossible to select stuff. So that's half. I think half is about right. Boom. And then we'll take this and bring it down. And that'll be kind of the outside of the curve. And then obviously we can fill in that base again. Let's just drag this up a touch because I want it to have straps. I'm suddenly about to sneeze. Fantastic. So what we'll do is we will grab this, duplicate it, bring it back a little bit, and we'll just square. So I don't know, there must be a better way to do this. There we are. There must be a better way to do this, but I don't happen to know it. Blender modeling is not something that is easy to actually learn. Most of the tutorial videos are really weird, at least for someone who's used to something like Maya. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just creating a clamp. Something like that. And then we'll just rotate it into place. We unrotated it, but I re-rotated it because I'm brilliant like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this whole thing. And the reason is because we are going to want to make it the actual strap. So we'll just start to bring that under control. Like that. And then we will pull this like so, delete it. Make sure it's not overlapping with anything. It is overlapping with the actual containment here, this thing here. So one of our options is to move this thing here, and the other is to make the actual object have some flex to it. And I think that the object having some flex to it is a way better idea. So we're just going to have it wrap around, but first we're going to need to put cuts in the right spots. There we are. And I think this whole setup can be larger. There we are. And this guy here is the other end of the strap that's going to be dangling off however we want it to dangle. So I believe that it's... No, that's not it. Is it... Ah, there it was. So it's control right click. That's fine. Something like that. It doesn't really matter just yet. We'll get to it in the long run. Oh, is it inside out? How did that get inside out? Fascinating. Well, let's un-inside out it. Oh, did I? Hold on. I managed to extrude the edges and not the center. Brilliant. So 6 of 10, Super Donut says, what's the goal of this game? Just exploring? So this game uses an engine, a quest engine that is a little bit more interesting than just exploring. Basically, since you're from the future, you've got access to holographic technology. So when you do things on the seafloor to try and uncover what happened or what's where, it shows up as a hologram, which should be a little bit more interesting than just taking pictures of fish, although it often starts as just taking pictures of fish. Not 100% sure how fun it's going to be, but it should be as fun as any other diving game. That's the hope anyway. Super Donut also asks if it's okay if he can use, or they can use, ask Unity-related questions. Sure, if it's in chat here, that's no problem at all. I don't know how much help I will be on some kinds of Unity-related questions, but I have been using Unity for quite a while, so I can at least point you in the right direction most of the time. Let's leave that flat for now because we're going to want to think about exactly what to do with it. So here we've got the setup where we're going to need to have two widgets, two projections. So let's go ahead and just make those projections as separate objects because they're going to be identical. Super Donut didn't want to be rude. Don't worry. At worst, I will say, sorry, can't help you. But in general, I am perfectly happy to help. Right now, we are going to just model some fancy tube for connecting. So let's give it a material so that I can see where the back is. There we go. Super Donut says they're making a mobile infinite runner, but instead of generating platforms, it generates Mario levels. That sounds pretty cool. I don't know very much about mobile compatibility, if that's related to what you're asking, but I do know quite a bit about generating levels, if that's what you're asking. So, in order to create the right kind of visual, we are going to want to have something like this. But what we really want to do is make sure that there is a detail coming off of it. So our detail, what we'll do is we'll grab this thing, turn this back on, and hide these. There we are. That way we won't have to worry about the top moving. There we are. So we'll just bring those down. Let's hide these two. Hide. Oh. There we go. Something like that. Yeah, that's not too shabby. And then what we'll do is we will simply, we could do a little bit of work on that crease, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to simply place a projection here. I think maybe 60 degrees would be about right. Let's try it. Super Donut says, I was wondering for my enemies, should I have multiple scripts for each enemy or one large enemy script? So you're going to have multiple enemies on the screen anyway. You're always going to have multiple enemy scripts in that there's going to be one script on each enemy for every mesh, one script on each enemy for every transform, for every physics, for every bounding box. The cost of putting in a custom enemy script on top of that is very low. The only reason that you'd need to go with having multiple enemies managed by a single core script is if you need to optimize. And that's not usually something you're going to need to do, not unless you're doing some hardcore AI stuff or like each enemy does 85 projections, like raycasts, something like that. For a Mario style enemy, there's no particular reason why you'd have to optimize. You can just go ahead and have one enemy script per enemy. Why is this not going? Go. There we are. So we'll just project this down. There we go. And shrink it. Yeah, more or less. We'll give this a face, specifically so we can extrude it. There we are. There we go. That should be not too shabby. Just, no, don't flip them, smooth them. There we are. Boom. I think I'm going to want something to balance it on the other side. Super Donut says, thanks for the advice. Do you do programming as a job and Unity as a hobby? Yeah. My day job is managing a very large series of green energy sites and connecting them all up and making sure they're all optimized. So when I look at someone trying to optimize a game, I say, you shouldn't bother. It's too early. Peace Teddy says, if you're thinking about like 500 different enemies, sure. If he's got a very special requirement that he has to optimize for, then he should optimize for it. But in general, I don't think Dots is even compatible with mobile. But in general, premature optimization is a great way to make your game too complicated to remember. And then you'll be like, oh, it's too hard, and give up. And it's like, I'd rather keep things simple for as long as possible so that you don't get bogged down and confused by your own work. So we're going to put on maybe some rivets. Let's try that. So we're going to create something simple like this. Bring it in. A face and extrude down. And then we'll give it a material so that we can see it. Let's give it a different material. That's a modifier. There's the material. Nope. There's the material. Let's give it a different one. We'll give it metal. There. And you can see I put it in backwards. No big deal. Just flip it. And then what we'll do is we will extrude and shrink. Nope. Turn this off. Shrink. And extrude again. And that should be enough for rivets. But I'd like the top to be a little bit friendlier. So what we're going to do is extrude up and then shrink. And that'll just give it a very beveled sensation. Now, it's pretty high poly for a decoration on a decoration, but I'm not too concerned because there's only ever going to be 2 of these in the game world. So who cares? Super Donut says they're trying to keep things as simple as possible and use source tree if they mess up. That is absolutely the right approach. Until you are super confident that you know how to make a game, you shouldn't try and make a hard game. It's like, I mean, a hard to program game. It's like you want to keep things manageable, and that means that you should always strive for simplicity until the last possible moment. Because otherwise, you're going to bite off more than you're ready for. And maybe next year you'll be ready to bite that stuff off, but this year you are not quite there yet. I mean, I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying in general, that's what happens. I don't know anything about you in specific. There we are. A nice little dim thing. Will Raz says, for someone that doesn't know the first thing about a programming language but wants to start learning game dev, what's the best one to learn? I was at the local library reading up on it, and the book recommended C++ or Java. So I would recommend that you don't bother learning programming or a programming language. I would recommend that you pick up Game Maker. The other alternative is you could try Scratch. Those are what are called visual programming. You'll learn the core ideas of programming while you are doing your game dev. And as long as your game doesn't have any sort of really hardcore programming requirements, that's going to be a lot more approachable than actually trying to just learn programming. Because if you're just learning programming, it's like make A and then have a loop so that it makes A, B, C, D. And you're like, I don't really see that. But if it's something like make your enemies go left on the screen, that's a very approachable sort of goal. So in my opinion, you should aim for starting with a game engine that is visual programming based. And I mean, Unreal is also largely visual programming based, but it's a much more complicated engine. So I might start with something like Game Maker, but that's just my advice. So if we were going to have this bolt in the way I want it to be, we are going to have to change where it is placed. So let's get it at the right position, like that. And then we will apply the location. And then we will rotate Z 30. Is 30 too much? No. And then we'll duplicate it and rotate Z negative 60. There we go. And then we got 2 of these guys. See? Kind of cartoony. Let's just shrink it down a little bit. That should be okay, I suppose. So now we'll just join them all together. Boom. And then we'll bring this up. Whoop. And then we'll shrink it down because it's way too big. Will Raz says they'll look them up. Yeah, I mean, Game Maker's a classic. There are literally thousands of professional grade games made in GameMaker, so it's not really a toy, but it's much more approachable than something like Unity or C++. Yeah, it's about the right size. So I'm not going to put it in yet, or if I do, I'm going to duplicate it first. I don't want to put it in and then lose it. But basically what we're going to want to have is another one of these bad boys here. And I think I'm trying to decide if I want that one pointed up and then this one pointed down, or if I want that one pointed up and then this one pointed out. Or maybe both of them pointed back. But if I do that, then the bolts, well, it doesn't matter. The reason is because there's going to be cables coming into this one. There's going to be cables coming up here. The other thing to think of is that I might not want them to be even like this. I might want them to be rotated, say, 30 degrees. If they're rotated 30 degrees, though, it's a little bit rough. If I rotate them 30 degrees and have them pointed off true, like this, that's more doable. That might work okay. Is that the kind of visual I'm looking for? I have them much more streamlined in this picture. I think what I'm going to want is to bring them down even smaller and then have them nestled inside of a cage. You can see how I've got this kind of brace over the top that sweeps in. That brace is something I'm definitely going to want, in which case I think that this is actually pointed the wrong way. Well, like that. And that means this guy, same deal. Super Donut says, there's one thing I don't understand in Unity, and that's how to, that's when I stop how to, and that is when I set how to have the player die when he stops moving. I set up to check his last position X and his current position X, and if they're equal to each other, he would die, but it kept killing him even though he would be moving. So if by check for his last position on the X-axis, I presume that he's moving along the X-axis, and I presume that when you're checking against his last position, that means you're saving his position. So you're saving it at the end of the round, and at the beginning of the round, you compare it, and then you overwrite that variable. If that's what you're doing, then the problem might be an order of operations issue. So there are a number of potential issues where your order of operations can matter. Like if your operations... So the easy answer is you should check and see if it's true for several rounds. And that should be something you can tweak. That way you can actually give the player a real sensation like, oh crap, I'm trapped against something. So, first round you detect it, a warning pops up, and then the first frame you detect it, the warning starts to pop up, and after 4 or 5 frames the warning is flashing, and then half a second in, you die. And the way to do that is just to keep a counter, and if they are not equal, you reset the counter, and if they are equal, you start to tick the counter up, and you take whatever actions you need to take. Yeah. If that is firing up constantly, even when the player is moving, yeah, so there's something wrong with how you are determining the X position. And I don't know enough about your thing to say whether or not it's possible that he's not moving on the X-axis like you think he is, because if you're checking his X position, are you checking his local X position, or are you checking his global X position? Is it firing off before the game starts? There's a lot of things that could be happening, but they're all not too challenging in terms of the logic is wrong, but you just need to figure out what the logic needs to be, right? The question is exactly what you're doing that's not working quite right. So I have these. I'm going to just delete them. Shabloom. Goodbye. Delete this person too. Goodbye. And what we're going to do is we are going to try and integrate these things into a shape. And I guess the easiest way to do that is to create the shape separately and try and get it to work. So we're going to create a new circle. I'm going to give it a lot, like not too many, 64. And then we'll rotate it by 90. And basically what we're going to do is we are going to extrude it and try and put it over the top of this guy. Like that. So with that in mind, we have to have it the right shape. Do we want it to be that shape? I think that's the wrong location. So we'll just reframe it a little bit here and drop it in like that. That feels more or less right. So we'll just bring it in. Center it. Doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. And then we'll delete like a crap ton. And all of these, because we only need 1/2. Super Donut says that they got it to work when current position is less than last position. Are you only saving the X position? Is that what you're doing? Because current position is less than last position. If you're comparing two vectors, that's probably not what you want to do. So this is the curve I want, but then it has to come down. Let's go ahead and just paint it. Okay, so you're running with a 2D set. X and Y are always right and up on the 2D situation, and you're not using Z. All I can think of is maybe you're not using global position, maybe you're using local position. Or are you doing, there is a trick that a lot of people recommend when you're doing endless runners, and that is that the level moves rather than the player. And if you're doing that, then obviously that's wrong. But for now, it's not wrong, it's just not compatible. For now, what I would recommend is just doing debug.log last position and see whether it changes. If it does change, that means that you are setting it at some point that's not right. You've set it up so that it's not being correctly initialized at the right moment. This is definitely okay. Well, if they are different in the debug log, then that means that at some point you are damaging them, or are you doing it in late update rather than update, or maybe you're doing it in frame update? So if you're doing it in, if you're using rigid bodies or something like that, you should do the comparison in fixed update rather than an update. But it should never be true for more than one frame. Even if you do have a desync problem between the physics and the update, it shouldn't continuously be true. And my assumption is that you've got just a logic problem somewhere, but I don't know enough about what you're using to tell you what that logic problem might be. So I think what I want is like a bulb here, like a torus. Let's go ahead and try it. Boom. That might be a little bit too much. Let's go ahead and do something else. How about just another circle? And the idea, a teardrop, that's what I was looking for, a teardrop shape. So if I were to delete these, we would be left with that, which isn't enough. Let's delete these. There we are. And then what we'll do is we'll extrude on the x-axis, like so. And then we'll try and create a teardrop shape. Oh, I'll turn that back on. Really, I should be just using Boolean, but I can't ever get the Booleans to work in Blender. They always seem to error out. I'm not really sure, but either way, if we set it up like this, then we should be able to create a nice transition between these shapes. Here's a tough one. I think we're going to want to just extrude. That should be okay, right? So he has posted in, they've posted in an update. If current position is, so well, you said that if death leeway is greater than 0, then is dead equals true. Try and, just set that to 5 and see whether or not you still get set to dead. Because the real critical thing to keep in mind here is this a problem that happens in one frame, or is this a problem that happens continuously? If it's a problem that happens in one frame, I know how to fix it. If it's a problem that happens continuously, that requires me to think a little bit more. So what I've done is I've created this setup like this, and you can see that the basic idea here is pretty basic. So the last thing we're going to have to do is march this on the x-axis and then fill it like that. And then we can just take this and really punch it up a little bit, so that it feels a little bit more natural. I'm not really sold on this yet. I have to think about it some more. But it's the right shape. It's just that the mesh seems weird. Some weeks I just cannot figure out how to do mesh topology, and it's just like my brain stops working in 3D. And I just don't know why that is, but I gotta say, I'm not a fan. Not a fan. So Super Donut says that it is the global position. Yeah, you definitely are doing the global position. So the problem you've got, Super Donut, is that the way that your hero moves is on something called fixed update, which happens however fast you set it to happen. Usually it's very, very fast. However, you're actually running that on something called update, which is not the same. Update happens every frame, and that happens whenever it happens to happen. Sometimes it's faster than fixed update, sometimes it's slower than fixed update. So if you wanted to have your stuff work, all you would need to do is type in fixed update instead of update. I'll type it into chat for you. It's like this. And what that'll do is it'll run it on the physics update rather than the visual update. That's presuming that you're using your physics updates. If you are manually moving the character without using the physics system, then maybe you've got a different problem. But in general, that's what people find. It's that they've screwed that up. Yeah, rigid body happens on fixed update. So you're going to want to do your stuff on fixed update as well. And then it should work exactly like you expect. So the only problem with your code is that it was put in the visual part and it needed to be put in the physics part. That's something that it's easy for someone who's been doing it for a while like me to debug, but probably would have been a bit of a nightmare for you because you're not taught about that stuff. I mean, who cares, right? Yeah, so they're already using fixed update for something else. So I would still recommend giving yourself quite a bit of leeway. I would actually recommend that when your death leeway goes up, you increase it by time.delta time and wait until it hits a threshold of your choice, like 0.5, to kill the player. But when it's going up, you should flash something on screen just to give the player that, that sensation, because it's much more fun to kill the player slowly. I don't know. This might take more effort than I thought because I'm not really doing very well today. I would love to blame Twitch, but I wasn't doing very well when I tried to model it on my own either. It's winter, and winter is tough for me. My brain stops working. So, not a great time to start watching Craig do Twitch streams, I'm afraid. But I'm not going to discontinue twitching for the entire winter. I'd never get back to it if I did that. I think we got that backwards. Let's put in a material and check. Nope. Super Donut has more questions, which is fine. It's certainly nice to be able to finish something because I'm certainly not going to finish this. So this part is going to sweep underneath, cup the underside of the tank, and then have a strap, right? So I think what I want to do is create this part as like a... No, it's going to be like a cloth, isn't it? It's got to be like some kind of cloth band, not a metal thing, because I'm not going to put in a hinge. Will Raz says, I checked out Game Maker on Google and watched some YouTube videos, and no offense, but that ain't even worth the bandwidth on the free download. I'm more ambitious. Well, in that case, you are going to have to learn how to program, and that is going to be tough. If that's your style, if you want to bite off a big chunk, you should go get Unreal. Unreal is available from the Epic Store. It is free, and it does have something called blueprints, which are very similar to how you would do things in Game Maker, but they're in a full high-spec 3D environment. The only problem is that Unreal is a full high-spec environment. It is tough if you are just starting out. So if you want to bite off that big chunk, feel free to get Unreal. That's a great option for you. I think you're going to have a hard time with it, but I certainly won't stop you. So if this is a cloth, then what I need to do is have like hooks here. Let's just delete this. Boom. So if I pop this in, oh, I've got an extra object here. There. If I grab this, and I just grab this, and I duplicate it, and I punch it out, oh, and we grab it. There. Grab it. Yeah, There we are. What I can do is I can make the binding I need out of this, and that's going to be choosing a position. I think that this is a good position right here. And then we will hide that, and we'll delete the rest. And then we'll bring this down. Super Donut says, when my character landed on a slope like this, he would fall down the slope instead of keeping on moving forward, but only if he hit a certain speed. I stopped the issue by capping his Y velocity, but I'm missing something obvious. Yes, you are. Go and select your rigid body, and you will see that there are options to lock the rotation. If you lock the rotation, your character will not spin out of control, and you will only see them spin when you manually spin them. Presumably that's what you want. Now, this is actually not what I want, so let's just delete that part. So that didn't work. If we've got something like this, and then we have the cloth coming off of it, I think that will be good. But I need this to get along with the weird leg thing I'm going to put in. I think that it would be better if this thing here... Well, no, that's not going to do it. Maybe I'll just have it come out of like a bracing here. Yeah, let's try it. So let's change the material. And then what we're going to do is... Did I get that on even? I guess I did. Ooh, that didn't work. Try that again. Super Donut says he locked the rotation a while ago. The character as a whole just slides down the slope, not rotating, just moving back. Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Well, chances are pretty high that what you've got is the physics of the slope. So each of your physics objects has a material attached to them, and that material determines how fast the physics works, like how fast whether there's friction, whether it's like walking on glass, whether it's what it's like. What you've got is a situation where the game is calculating how fast you should be falling down the slope, because you've told it to do that by telling it to use a rigid body. And since that's going to fight against your ability to move as you see fit, that's going to end up causing you some problems. There's no really great fix for that, except for to turn gravity off. But if you turn gravity off, then you've got to manually bring your character down from every jump. I'm not sure. I haven't ever tried to do that with a rigid body, to turn off just the slope calculations. I wouldn't recommend you do it like that. That's making things more complicated. What you need to do is make things simpler. You need to go and you need to cut out the slope effect. You need to make it so that the slope no longer affects, no longer pushes your character back. You can do that by turning up the material, the physics material. You can turn up the tension, what's it called? The friction. You can max out the friction. But the problem is that if you do that, you won't have any slide. If that's okay, then that's what you should do. You just max out the friction on the materials involved, and then you won't ever fall down a cliff, but you will stop very, very fast. You won't have very much skid. You know what I mean? If you need the skid and you need the material, you might have to ask someone else. I'm not super familiar with how that would work because I very rarely use rigid bodies like that. Usually I have a custom character controller, which is another option. If you would like, there are a large number of custom character controllers, many of which are free. So if you look in the asset store or on the internet for a custom character controller, 2D, you'll probably find some options that have exactly what you need. Because basically what you've got right now is like a Sonic sort of situation rather than a Mario situation. You know what I mean? So this can be our mount for the tentacles. Ugly. Try it again. Better. Sorry, I'm trying to do this, and for some reason, I'm not being very smart. Kind of looks like a face. Oh, don't flip it. Smooth shade it. Darn it. Oh, man. I'm not doing as well as I might have hoped. I don't know why I'm being so bad at this today. It's just not coming. It's not flowing, and I don't know why. What the hell? All right, well, let's try it again. Interesting. Oh, I have some hidden stuff. I see. I see. Go ahead and delete the hidden stuff. That explains a lot, actually. However, it doesn't help me in the moment. So with this as that part, what we have then is cloth coming off of this. But I don't want the cloth to come off of it in a along a flat plane, because that's not how these things are shaped. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this face and we're going to extrude it. And then we're going to just twist this until it is viable for what we want it to do. And you can see how it's not even close to being on the planar incident. It's like not flat. So we're going to flatten it, and then we're going to twist it and make it work. So more or less. However, clearly we need to put in one more little cut because that's not quite where I want it to be. Let's I don't want to bevel. I guess I do want to cut. It's just that it's really in a shitty position. Let's just bevel. All right. And then from there, what we can do is we can have a cloth come down and attach around the base here, like just shoop shoop, like a triangular cloth shape. I guess we should go ahead and try it. So let's go ahead and duplicate this guy. You know what? Let's delete that guy. Let's duplicate this guy. And then we're going to want to delete most of him. We might just, because I want it to wrap around the base but I don't want any of the extra crap. It's complicated. So we'll just bring it up a touch. And then we'll cut all of the bits of the base that are not suitable. So like that. Rick Metalster says that it's all about the base. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't get any of it to work. Treble or bass. None of it's working. So just delete here. This is the kind of cloth swatch that we're looking for, but I think I over deleted. So I think what I want to do is actually be a little more gentle about what we're deleting. So let's delete here. And then we'll delete here. And we'll find a way to make this cloth pattern the one we're actually using. So I think if we extrude this, we can just adjust this guy because it's just that it's not in the right spot. So I'm not at all convinced that that is even vaguely good. I think that it's pretty crap. Let's continue on. We'll come back to it later. The other thing I wanted to do, though, is make it so that it had some height to it. So it's kind of like this, but there we are. I don't know. I think maybe I was on the right path before rather than trying this cloth shit. So let's go ahead and delete that. The right path before was to make it out of plastic. So let's try that. The basic idea of this approach is that we're going to have two spirals. And I think that one of the issues I had was that my spirals were including this casing, and I needed to have them separate from the casing. So we're going to try that right now. Just scale this up and create our lower spiral, which we do by bringing this down and then sloping it. Whoop. Like that. And then what we can do is turn on proportional editing and try and get this into shape. But you can see how it's denting down there. We don't want that. So we're going to hide these guys. Just edit these guys. There we go. And obviously that's the wrong material, so let's switch it out for tank. There we go. I think that we want this to be much more extreme. So let's go ahead and once again hide this and bring this inside. Wait, the inside doesn't exist. That's right. So I made it the full base, but I don't want it to be the full base. It's not all about that. Just delete faces. We only want it to be that, half. And because of that, you can see just how much extra room there is on this particular part. So we'll go ahead and hide this and then bring this way down. Let's change this to sharp. That's better. And now I want to integrate that with this, which I think I can just... Oh, it's off center. How did it... one of these things ended up off center, and I don't know which it was. Yeah, fuck it. We'll have to redo this thing. It didn't end up working. So with that in mind, this will be the new on center. Regardless of whether it's on center or not, this is what we're going to call on center. So if we pull this out, we can sort of see how it's going to intersect. And then we can just bevel. Take this guy. We got to one of these options. Move it. And we definitely are going to want to have this be a fat element. But as you can see, if we bring it in like this, it does all sorts of weird shit because the topology is just terrible. So what we might do instead is just delete these edges and fill in. Wow, that's awful. Hold on. Hello? Oh, I see. Those go all the way down. Aha. It's not great. So Super Donut says, another question. I have an enemy like a Goomba, and he kills the player, but dies if the player lands in their head. I did it with a trigger collider on the Goomba's head, but I feel like there's an easier way to do it. It really depends on what you want to do. There are literally a million different ways to do it. Probably an easier way for... Yeah. The trigger volume is not a bad idea. In general, the way that games do it, though, is that the enemy just has one collision box. And when the player collides, it just checks to see whether or not the player is above. If the player is above, then it works. If the player is not above, then they get hit. Rather than having two distinct trigger volumes. But it depends on your needs. Sometimes you actually want two distinct trigger volumes. It really does depend on what you want the game to feel like. So what I'm doing now is I am trying to set it up so that this guy is going to be irrelevant. So this is actually the inner face, and this is the outer face. So if I were to grab and over here if I were to duplicate these and then scale them up, these are the outer skin. The thing I was working with before, that is technically the inner skin, which is supposed to be facing the other way. So we're going to go ahead and flip that skin. Boom. Now we do have this thing connected to it, so we're going to have to rip that. Boop. No problems. Now this should be a separate object. It's not. So there's still something connected here. What's going on? It ripped on the wrong edge. Brilliant. All right. So for some reason, it's refusing to rip on the edge that matters. So we're just going to go into a face mode and delete these faces. I should have been more careful when I was building it, but I wasn't. Oh well. Super Donut says thanks. So yeah, if you need more advice, you can always tweet at me. I don't check Twitter too frequently, so don't expect like an instant response. But assuming that your advice requirements are not too over the top, usually I'll be able to help. So. Come on, Craig. Could you please click on the things you're trying to click on rather than on random other shit that doesn't matter? You know what? It would be faster to actually just delete this and then recreate it. Exciting. So now what we've got to do is go through and combine all of these. So, oh, that one's facing the wrong way. Sorry, I know this is tedious. I am not doing very well in terms of not screwing up today. Brilliant work, but that's the way it goes some days. Super Donut says, can you explain in 200 words or less how to make a particle system randomly generate a sky? I got that covered. And he offers to do some pixel drawing. I don't think I'll need pixel drawing. I don't do 2D games anymore. But thanks for the offer. So here what we've got is a case where I want this particular point to be a little bit more. So we're going to just pull it out. There we are. That's how I want it to look. And then we'll add in a mounting element here for the arm. To do that, why don't we go ahead and start here. Extrude that in, and then like that. Bevel? Too many bevels. Bevel. There you go. Not 100% sold on that. We'll figure it out later. Yeah, this is always going to look like a face because it's got two screws that have that vertical cat's eye pupil on them. No matter what I do, it's always going to be face-like, which is fine. I think that's great. Super Donut says, what's your favorite game? I've got a lot of favorite games, but if you mean what do I have the most hours in, it's Kerbal. Kerbal Space Program. All right, so that is one of them. And then the other one's going to be up here. And we'll just do the same thing we did before. I'm going to duplicate the whole thing. And then what we'll do is scale this up. And then we'll delete all the shit we don't need. And then we'll take this. Change the material. There we go. And we'll want to create a nice curve. And part of that is going to be adjusting the curve into a nice, oh, I got it set up. There we are. I don't know, do I want it to be down here? Because I think that I want it to be mirroring the lower element. That's kind of the idea, right? It's like swish, swoosh. Yeah, that's what I want. Swish, swoosh. I think that's not bad in terms of the basic visual. We're going to need to extrude that, though, and create a nice exterior skin. There we are. Like that. That will create a baseline for whatever the heck we're going to put on top, right? And this is basically how you slot the tanks in, with this thing being strapped on. And there's probably like a hinge here, back here where we can't really see it yet, where the whole thing will separate if you undo these straps. Not really sold on exactly how it's going to look yet, but the basic idea is that we just want it to... I think that's probably a good approach, these double sweeps. Super Donut says, did you make the model or download it? So it's based on the MakeHuman mesh. The MakeHuman meshes are CC0, so feel free to go use MakeHuman. It's free. It has a lot of mods. I've modded it quite a bit, but it is based on the MakeHuman mesh because there's no reason for me to continually model a human mesh over and over and over again. You could use like a Maya mesh or something. The MakeHuman mesh has one serious issue, and that is that it's really low poly. For a modern game, this is like almost mobile level. It's really, really low poly. I would say it's not low poly. It's medium poly. But in a game where you're going to be looking at your character fairly closely, I would like to have double this kind of density. And there is just no MakeHuman mesh, at least not last time I checked. There's nothing that is double this density. It just doesn't exist. So that's the one downside. If you're trying to do something really, really super high quality, MakeHuman won't work. Sorry, I had to drink some water. Hopefully that wasn't audible. So I'm thinking about this centerpiece, and basically I don't want it to feel too much like, I don't know, a diaper. So I'm thinking about the shapes that I want to use in this piece, and first off, so maybe I will try some Boolean shit. Let's go ahead and try some Boolean shit. So let's delete that. And then we'll add in... I don't generally do Boolean shit because it is really, really prone to being buggy. And I know that there are some elements, some plugins that can help you. But the plugins, I've never had any luck with them. I'll wait until they're a little bit more mature. Super Donut says, can particle systems generate game objects? Yes, but they won't be particles. Particle systems have a number of events that can be called, and they can also generate lights, both of which can do game object stuff. So, for example, let me show you. It's been a while since I've actually shown you what I'm working on. Let me go ahead and show you the sorts of things that you can do with particle systems. So this is the diving game in question. And these are all particles. Everything you see in terms of all the plants, they're all particles. All those purple fish up there, those are particles. All of these things, particles. This rope here, technically not a particle, but based on particles. These are not particles, but they're going to be particles. I just haven't finished optimizing them yet. So you can do a lot with particles. Particles can also generate lights. When they have a collision, they can do an on-death thing, which can be either a trigger of your choice or spawning more particles. There are a ton of things you can do with particles that can interact with or become game objects. But the particles themselves are not game objects, and that's kind of the point. You'd have to use an event or something to generate a game object. So I guess if we're going to start to create, let's go ahead and do a cube here. I'll just shrink that down, bring it up. And what we'll do is we will tell this to, I don't actually know how to do this. Here's a torus. Let's see, can I drop this cube inside of that torus? There we are. No? No? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. My bad. I don't want the torus to be inside of the light. Can I undo that? There we are. Okay, so you drag, you hold shift, it becomes a sub-object, right? Torus cube. Okay, so now we've got the cube inside of this torus. The only problem is I don't want to render the cube in such an obvious way. I want it to be wire. There we go. So now what I can do is I can manually add in a whole bunch of Boolean shit. Now I know that there are ways to do this without having to manually add it in because there are some plugins to do it, but I don't happen to have any of them. So this is the way it's going to work. Stop that. Select it there. And you can see that when I move this around, it changes what we see. So if we set it up like this, you can sort of get a sense of how we can start to work on it. But I think what I need to do is edit this because it is going to need to be a little bit cleverer. There we go, like that. And because it's a torus, it actually goes around and inside like that. And we're obviously going to have to do something about that later. But you can sort of see that that is kind of how I want it to look. We're going to need to do some additive stuff as well. So should I create another torus? I don't think so. I think I need a box. Oh, that might be too thin. Maybe that's good. I don't know. Let's continue. So let's go ahead and add in another box cube. And we'll just drop this cube inside the torus as well. Bam. There is, like, I always forget where the rendering options are. I don't know why I always forget. I use it quite a bit. So this cube, we'll go ahead and tell our torus to just select from this cube instead. I don't want to type it. I just want to select it. This one. Pain in the ass. There we are. And we're going to go ahead and add them together. So this cube. Nope. Nope. Why is it shrinking everything? There we are. Superfont says, Super Donut rather, says, where did you first get into Unity? Like, learn how to use it. So I was using something called Torque, which is basically Unity back in, like, I don't know, 2002. When Torque went out of business and Unity started up, I was like, well, this is basically the same thing as Torque, so I'll just use Unity. And I got on board really early. I was a paying member for a really long time. I stopped paying them because their business practices are shit. But for a very, very long time, I was one of the #1 Unity fans. I was like, they were the thing that defined my game making, just because that was the engine that I could use the most easily. These days, I'm not a big fan of Unity, not as I was. They're not terrible, but their business practices are really pretty suspect. So I try to avoid recommending them for anybody who's actually got like business stuff going on. You know, if you're an indie dev just learning how to make games, that's one thing. But if you're actually like gonna publish, Unity can be a real pain in the ass. Alan stopped in. Hey. Superdonut asks, why is Unity a pain in the ass? Well, in addition to being run by the worst kind of popped collar douchebags, they will bother you for a long time if you stop paying them or if they just want to. I think the only time I've ever gotten Unity to contact me was when I stopped paying them, and then they wouldn't not contact me. I begged them to stop, and it took them really, honestly, 30 emails to stop telling me that it was, I should reconsider and pay them some more. They clearly only care about paying customers. That is to say, the top tier customer base, and that's not useful to me. Those are not the customers that need the help, So that's why I'm not a big fan of Unity. So now what I need to do, I think, but their business practices are awful. So, it's not just that. So if I were to extrude this, you know what? I should probably mirror. Boop, there. So if I were to bring these out like this, kind of looks like a robot. Alan also agrees that Unity's business practices are shit. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody that's actually used Unity that would disagree. They are famously shitty about their business. It's quite a thing. So it looks like I'm going to have to bring the whole thing out or shrink that purple stuff. I think I'll bring the whole thing out. So if I were to just move everything like this, and then I can come up here and move this out. Oh, I shouldn't have. Yeah, fix it. There we are. Is that far enough? Maybe I need to scale it up. That's good. Enough. Charles Hayes says they ditched Unity and adopted Godot about a year ago. That's a great choice. I haven't gotten into Godot yet because I am really used to Unity, and this is a problem. Anybody who's used a tool for too long can tell you switching becomes a huge problem because you're so in the zone on your old tool, right? And then you switch over and you can't figure out anything. And it's just, you don't want to have to learn it again. And obviously, a lot of Godot's stuff is very similar to Unity. So it's not like it would be the most tremendous chore, the most tremendous pain in the ass ever. It's just enough of a pain in the ass that it's been really hard for me to switch. How do I want to shape this? Not sure. Let's go ahead and fill this little crease in. That's not going to work. I guess I want to delete that edge. There we are. There we go. So we're going to have to do a lot of work. Let's go ahead and, you know what, let's bake that down. It might be closer than what I was needing, so now we can delete these two guys. Deleted. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Why did it delete the torus? I want to delete the rest of that stuff. There we are. Deleted. So if we come in here, we could theoretically put in some creasing to make this feel a little bit better. Might as well try it before we continue on. Now that Alan's shown up, I'm about to stop, by the way. It's been 2 hours, an hour and a half at least, and I am obviously not quite as smart today as I would like to be, so it's being a little bit tough to actually get shit done. That didn't help at all. All right, exciting. So we're going to have to do some work on it, but the basic shape, this is the basic shape. If this was the the Korean knockoff version of what I'm trying to make. That would be what it would look like. But that's not the actual shape I want. In terms of, you know, how it really feels. I need to have some more angles. I need to have some more smooth elements. I like this. I like this curve here, but clearly this part down here needs some work. The good news is it's its own separate mesh. I mean, it's not, but it's its own separate pool. So I can take this element and I can just replace it with whatever I need. Also, I can delete like 90% of that top element. And I'm going to have to come up with something here. I think maybe a separate like nook, like just a double mouth. That would work. Super Donut says the only reason they got into Unity was because Enter the Gungeon was made on it. Oh, a lot of games were made in Unity. This is an era where middleware is really, really powerful. There are games made in Unity and Unreal, Game Maker, and even Godot that are world class, and it's really amazing. Alan says, keeping the back as plates would work well with the smooth curve. See, the problem is that I've got this smooth curve here, and I'm not 100% sure how to do, you know, both. Let's go ahead and delete this part because it's clearly not working. Boolean operator creates a lot of garbage. Always got to spend some time cleaning it up or I forget the term. Putting in new topology. Retopo, yeah. But for now, we're just going to delete the stuff we don't want. There we are. And then if we wanted to create some new plates here, there are a lot of ways we could go about it. I think let's go ahead and start by mirroring, because I don't think we want to continue to try and keep this unmirrored. It's just a pain in the ass. So with that in mind, we can delete everything that's on one of the sides. There we go. So if we wanted to interact with this smooth plate, this is the part that is going to give us problems. So I'm just going to lift it straight up. Not quite that high. There we are, like that. That's going to be our constraint, and it might be something we can just kind of use directly. So if we were to do that, then what if we scale Z0? What if we were to... Sorry, I'm trying to grab this particular edge, punch it out, select it, punch it in, and then we could try to make this merge more interestingly. So if we were to extrude it, obviously we don't need the whole hoop. We'll probably get rid of half of it. But if we were to turn this on, what we could do is adjust like that. And then we could add in a plate here, right? What about cooling fins? Oh, that's a good idea. I like that. I like it. All right, so if we're going to put in cooling fins, let's delete this crap. And what we'll do is we will just add in some squares. So one of the things that I really wanted to do is I've got this imaginary, so you can't see it, but I've got this kind of plug floating up here where all of the tubes go in. So I want to soften the region between them. So let's just put in the tube center as kind of an indicator for a second here. What I'd like to do is I'd like to create a nice sweep. And I think the fins are a perfect way to do that. Excuse me while I burp. So if I, too thin. If I were going to bevel this edge, I can create this kind of visual. And one of the things I can do is I can match it to the basic curve of the sweep here, the basic setup. So that is something that has some potential to it. Not 100% sure about it yet, but let's try it. So if we bring this in and up, could we adjust this so that it didn't suck? Well, if we do this, then what we can do is we can add in the box. So let's go ahead and do that now. So the problem is, how does the box interact with the base, with this area here? That's something I haven't really ever settled on, but what I need is, I think I just need a broad back. Let's try it. Let's give it a broad back and see what happens. This is what we call modeling by force. Topology? What's that? So bring it up. What we can do is we can bevel here. Alan says that he already likes it. Well, that's nice to hear. But I don't, so therefore it's not good enough. So if we do something like this, that's not too shabby. But this part feels weird, doesn't it? We can always use this outer edge here to sort of brace it in. Let's go ahead and do exactly that. If we use these cut edges, it doesn't quite line up, does it? Let's use these edges. And then what we'll do is we'll extrude them and bring them in. Ah! And then we can also bring them in. And then we can always separate this so that it hides that little piece. See? And then over here, these can just be straight in. Not 100% sure about this piece still. Let's try it one more time. I've got a little clip there. Hold on. I don't want all of that. Yeah, I buy it. I buy that shape right there. Obviously, this part needs to be adjusted. It is not where it needs to be now. Alan says, oh yeah, it needs to follow that inside edge. So these are not at the right height yet, if that's what you're talking about. I'm still just kind of fussing, but it would be something more like this. But this here, I need to adjust it, and I think the only way to really do that is to do it in see-through mode. Only problem is I can't, there we are. So if I were to bring this, there we are. So we've got this here, which is obviously just bupkis. Just delete it, it's gone. This is actually also a terrible, terrible edge. Just delete it, it's gone. This here needs to go. It's bad. No. Boom, it's gone. This here, all gone. So the only issue now is, of course, that it no longer quite has that crisp edge. No big deal. Just kill it and bring it back. No, don't delete. Dissolve. There we are. Alan says, ah, lol. I think he was probably telling me that the part that I just deleted looked like crap. And he was right. The part I deleted did look like crap. That's why I deleted it. All right, so we need to get rid of these verts. Boom. And that guy there. Boom. And now you can see that it's got a perfect little line. The back end is a little bit screwy. We'll just delete these guys. Let's go ahead and create this back edge, which I think will just extrude straight down. And then extrude in and down a little bit, like that. And that'll give us kind of this hook shape, see? And if we bring that hook shape in, oh, wow. Undo. This edge is garbage. Ah. There we are. That's a little better. So now when we extrude this in, we can create kind of a mouth. That's the hope, at least. We're gonna have to do some adjusting. Should be a little bit okay though. Something like this, but obviously this edge needs a little bit of work. We'll work on it later. I think maybe. Oh, come on. Seriously? You jerk. Okay, so we're going to cut here. I like it. Alan says, how fine does the detail need to be? And Super Donut says, goodbye. Bye. So it's going to be something, I'll show you. This is easy to demonstrate. It's going to be something that needs to look good from medium distance. So putting aside the broken neck, you can see that as we zoom in, it goes blurry. So we don't have to worry about the detail level on this sort of scale, but we do have to worry about it at this scale. And it's not always going to be in the dark, so you will be able to see it in the light sometimes. So it's going to need to be reasonable. Right now, the whole entity here is broken, in case you're wondering. This is a part of the complete redesign of the diver. We're going to be putting in leggies like this, and they're going to do most of the swimming for us. So I wonder whether or not I can just delete. Let's go ahead and save this. And maybe create a duplicate just to be safe. And then if we can just delete this part. Like, first off, we have to delete these because they're all part of the same issue. And then we can just, like, not have this. Just like that. I do not know. That didn't work, did it? Try again. Oh, it should have worked. Well, I mean, it's not like the player's ever going to see it up close, but I would like it to not suck. These are the important things that you do in game dev. Suck a little bit less, please. I might redo the top just to get it a better fit, but the basic idea there, this is more or less how I want it. I'm not sure that I like this gap. So the reason that gap exists is because of a difference in framing. If I were to put this here and bring this up, I don't know if this is any better in the other direction. There's going to be a gap regardless because it's kind of in this awkward space. I guess my best bet would be to actually just widen this. But then it doesn't have that sharp feel, does it? I bet I could fix that. There, now it's sharp. I am just not 100% on this, not sold 100%. But it's certainly better than anything I came up with before. So hooray. And you, get back to being sharp, you jerk. Don't know. Still, that's better than it was before by a lot. This is starting to feel okay. I'm a little bit concerned about where I'm going to put the readout, but I guess right here would be good. So let's go ahead and just put in a quick little readout dial. Go ahead and I think we're going to have to just extrude straight in. You can see we've got a little bit of error. Let's go ahead and just make it shallow. And then we'll take that point and just hide it. There we are. So that'll be the display that we use for showing the player how much energy they've burned out or whatever. However, we can see that it's caused us some issue down here at the base because I didn't do it right. So we're going to need to put in a cut and then do everything we did again. There we are. That's how it'll be. Maybe. Technically speaking, it is the same material as the rest because the material change happens in Unity, not here in Blender. So you can't really tell what's going on, but this will glow. Alan Wyvern says, I reckon the surround should be the same thickness across the shoulds. The surrounds? This looks like a car grill around the edges, like the tank's Lomo. Yeah, maybe. Alan Wyvern says, the lip of the shoulders. Are you talking about this here, which is definitely garbage at the moment? Because I'm not convinced that it's right. First off, it's a little bit small. Let me go ahead and add in another cylinder. So the lip between the fins is thinner compared to the lip outside them. Here? I see what you mean. Yeah, that might be a good point. So basically, if I move this out, it would feel more balanced. But of course, the problem is that if I... That was weird. Try that again. The problem is that if I move that out, it reveals this part, so I have to be careful not to... Yes, no, lol, he says. Well, then you'll have to be specific. Either way, let's try putting this new element in. I don't know how long the delay on Twitch is anymore, so it's hard for me to tell what people are talking about. Alan says he's not good at it. Yeah, well, you've already come up with a great idea that saved the whole process. So you're not good at it is better than my good at it, if that makes you feel any better. So if I were to switch this over to rendering in mode wire. If I switch this over to rendering in wire, you can see how it fits. And the idea I have is that maybe what I need is a thicker... He's talking about the smooth curve portion, the bottom of it curves in. You talking about this part here? The bottom of the top. You mean this part here? Yeah, so there is a cut in here, if that's what you're talking about, which was the whole point I was trying to get around earlier. So the issue with this is that there is a curve here. As you can see, this curve coming away from the center of mass. But this is a straight line. So I was thinking about how to get that to merge with the curve without feeling too forced. And my original idea was to force it. And then when you came up with the idea of fins, I thought what I would do is I would put the fins to either side of the curve. And this could be further left to really accentuate that. With the idea being that they would hide that curve behind some kind of bounce, some kind of thing. But what I could do instead is do a stepped in. I could do like a thin, thicker, thickest. And I think that's a good idea. So that's what I'll do. Which means that this can be fairly small because it's not supposed to be the thick part. So if I do it like that, then we can delete most of this. Delete it. Boom. And then... Did I delete too much? Let's just delete the faces. And then what we can do is if we were going to bulge out, we could simply grab the elements that we want to bulge like this. Let's go ahead and just delete half of it. Shtaboom. And then put in the mirror. Shtaboom. Shtabam. Now we'll try one more time here. If we were going to do that, then we could do is this, right? And we could just extrude up. Oh, it doesn't really extrude very well, does it? It's not on the right axis. we can still do it. It just looks a little bit odd. It would need a lot of cleanup, wouldn't it? But what we could do instead is we could duplicate this and scale it up. That won't actually help, will it? It will not. Okay. So instead what we're going to have to do is do it one line at a time. Fine. So we'll just extrude this one line. And then we'll just extrude this one line. I guess extruding is a poor idea. Let's just duplicate this one line. And then these we can make even bigger, like this. And then what we can do, in theory, is bond them all together. Brilliant work. My best, if I do say so myself. Why are you erroring? That's better. I must have had something else randomly selected. So if we then do that, we can also then do the same thing, duplicate, scale up, bridge. What? You weird garbage creature, bridge. You're literally the same loop. Oh, okay. There. What? Blender isn't normally that bad at bridging, but whatever. We'll do it manually. No biggie. Bridge. Bridge. Now if we turn it back to being visible, you get this kind of look. And this is sort of the croissant of death look, which is not terrible. Very Bioshock. Well, then we shouldn't use it. I like the croissant of death, though. So this puts in a lot of extra bulk, which is not a terrible idea. And then what we can do is we can extrude down here, at least in theory. Do we want to extrude here and here? Yeah. So we'll just down. There we are. But you can see how that's tilted. Is that tilted? It's tilted. So what we actually would need to do is untilt it first, which would require a cut here. We'll do that later. Rick Metalster says, are you dissing Bioshock? Bioshock Infinite? Yes, it was trash. It was the worst game of the year. But the other Bioshocks were fine. And the visuals on Bioshock Infinite were fine. Rick Metalster says that it's okay if I hated the one he didn't like much, which apparently I do, so hooray. So obviously this still needs a lot of cleanup, but if we look at this guy, just get rid of him. Yep. You can see how the shapes are starting to come together. We've got this issue here where it bleeds in, and that's the sort of thing that I was trying to avoid in the first place. How to hide that particular element is a good question, especially when it's clear that we're going to have to shrink this entire set. So if we shrink that, it's going to be even worse. See? So, well, we could just grab the whole thing and move it up. That would hide this little shit piece there. Make it a little bit better. We can also scale it down a little bit towards the 3D cursor. Make sure the 3D cursor is in the middle. And then scale it down. That didn't actually help, did it? It might have made it worse. So undo. Well, this we can fix by putting in the second interior plate. So in order to do that, we'll just delete this and then merge here, and then extrude out. And then we will soup. Don't know. I am thoroughly unconvinced, but let's try it. Interesting. Rick Meadowster says they're planning to put out a new BioShock in case I've been living under a rock. Yeah, I've got BioShock muted. So my problem now is that this underside needs to be straight, and it's not. I'll have to think about it. I've gone on long enough. It's been 2 hours, and my brain hasn't worked for a single minute of it. So I will see you folks next week. Maybe I will have already modeled this by then. But the point is, this is going to have like long, squiggly tentacles coming out the back. And then it's going to have more tentacles here, which are just going to be like loose, flappy cords. And then it's going to have some cables. So all of those things are going to make it look kind of like you're, half squid or something. It should be fun. In theory, if I can ever get it to work. I don't know why I can't. My brain just doesn't work in these days. I will see you folks later.